Picture this. It's nearly 40 degrees Celsius outside, over 100 degrees Fahrenheit. And yet, millions of people across Europe are sitting comfortably inside homes with no air conditioner at all. No hum of a compressor, no cold blast of air, just quiet, natural comfort. Is it because Europeans are somehow immune to heat? Or is something deeper going on? Something tied to climate, architecture, culture, and centuries of hard-won wisdom? By the end of this video, you'll understand exactly why so many European homes never needed air conditioning, and why that's now starting to change. Here's the interesting part. It isn't about being rich or poor. And it isn't about not caring about comfort. Whether a home has air conditioning comes down to climate, architecture, culture, and hundreds of years of history. In some countries, generations have lived without ever feeling the need for a cooling unit. While in tropical countries, a few hours without power on a summer day can make life miserable. What creates such a difference between two places under the same sun? It starts with something deceptively simple: climate. Rewind a few decades, and summers across most of Europe were far cooler than today. Cool enough that air conditioning was considered a needless luxury. Temperatures above 35 degrees were once rare in Germany, the United Kingdom, or the Netherlands. If your whole year brought only a handful of genuinely hot days, would you spend thousands of euros on a cooling system? That simple math led millions of families to make the same choice, generation after generation. But climate alone doesn't explain everything. Even as temperatures have risen, many old European homes still stay remarkably cool. The secret isn't a modern machine. It's built directly into walls designed centuries ago. Which is exactly why first-time visitors are so surprised to walk into a home with no air conditioning and still feel cool. Step inside a home built 100 years ago in Europe, and you'll feel the coolness almost immediately, even while the sun blazes outside. One of the most important tricks was building walls far thicker than in most modern houses. Since stone and brick absorb heat incredibly slowly, outdoor heat needs many hours before it can even begin penetrating inside. And by the time it finally moves through, the sun has already begun to set, the wall acting like a giant thermal battery, delaying the heat until it simply doesn't matter anymore. It wasn't just walls. Many homes had very high ceilings, letting hot air rise and collect near the top, away from the people below. While windows were placed facing each other to create cross ventilation. During the day, people closed their shutters to block direct sunlight. Then threw every window open at night to welcome the cool air. Close by day, open by night, a rhythm passed down through generations. Even today, engineers consider these old principles the foundation of modern energy-efficient design. Since much of today's green building technology is really just rediscovering ideas from centuries ago. But architecture is only part of the answer. Something else matters even more: the dramatic swing between daytime and nighttime temperatures, an advantage most tropical regions simply don't share. Daytime temperatures might climb to 32 degrees, but by midnight they can drop to 16 or 18. A swing of more than 10 degrees, that's enough to completely transform an overheated house within a few hours of open windows, fully recharging it for the next scorching day. That's why many families just open windows for a few hours each evening instead of running an air conditioner all night. Saving electricity and sleeping better too. Compare that to tropical countries where nighttime air holds on to its heat for hours, sometimes staying near 30 degrees, even at 11 at night. So opening windows barely helps and can even let in more heat and humidity. It's not just temperature either. Lower humidity across Europe makes heat feel far more bearable, since sweat evaporates faster in drier air. That's why 30 degrees in Germany feels different from 30 degrees in Southeast Asia. Not every part of Europe is the same, of course. Southern Europe runs hotter, and in Spain, Greece, and southern Italy, air conditioning is already common. Climate always shapes how people build, but if the planet keeps warming, will these traditional solutions still be enough? For centuries, mild summers were simply a fact of life in Europe. But that picture is changing fast. Heat waves, once considered rare, are returning more often and lasting longer, with cities across Germany, France, and the United Kingdom repeatedly recording temperatures above 35, even 40 degrees. If an entire week stays that hot, even the thickest walls eventually warm all the way through. And opening windows at night isn't enough anymore, especially now that nighttime temperatures aren't dropping like before. A phenomenon called tropical nights, when nature's own cooling mechanism essentially stops working. That's exactly when many families start considering a device they never thought they'd need. Air conditioner sales across several European countries have surged after recent record-breaking heat waves. And it isn't just homes. Schools, hospitals, and offices are investing too, straining power grids never designed for such demand and creating a real dilemma between comfort and carbon emissions. So, instead of just installing more units, Many cities are designing coolness directly into urban planning. Planting trees, building green rooftops, and using heat-reflective materials. Because fighting the heat isn't just about one air conditioner. It's about how an entire city is built. Even as weather grows hotter, many families still aren't rushing to install air conditioning. And the next reason is very practical: the electricity bill. Across much of Europe, electricity prices rank among the highest in the world. So every power-hungry appliance gets weighed carefully before purchase. And simply closing curtains at the right moment can drop a room's temperature by several degrees at almost no cost at all. Many Europeans have built energy-saving habits passed down for generations, using power only when genuinely necessary, and even in homes that already have air conditioning. Many only switch it on during the hottest days, treating it as a backup plan rather than a daily habit. There's another factor people rarely think about: the noise from outdoor compressor units, which can affect quiet neighborhoods. Many cities enforce strict rules about where units can be mounted. And in historic Old Town districts, attaching one to a facade sometimes requires special permission or is banned outright. To protect architecture that stood for centuries, many people accept a little extra heat to preserve their shared living space. And while that might sound unusual, within the culture, it's completely normal. There's one particular reason so many European homes don't have air conditioning. They simply aren't allowed to install one however they like. Millions sit within protected heritage zones, buildings hundreds or even thousands of years old. So any change to the exterior must follow strict rules. And a single outdoor unit can disrupt the character of an entire historic district. Approval can be denied or require a special permit. And even then, every pipe has to be hidden, often costing more than the unit itself. An investment many families decide isn't worth it for a few hot weeks. Museums and landmarks need specialized systems too, protecting paintings and antiques while staying completely invisible, which is exactly why tourists rarely spot outdoor units on Europe's most famous old town streets. Mention Europe, and many assume the whole continent shares one climate. But the reality is very different. Northern and Southern Europe span thousands of kilometers apart. And while the North is known for mild summers, the South endures long, intense heat, which is why air conditioning is far more common in Spain, Greece, or southern Italy than in Germany or the Netherlands. Even within one country, needs vary. Coastal cities stay cooler thanks to sea breezes. Inland areas run hotter, and mountains create cool pockets even in summer. So when someone says Europe simply doesn't have air conditioning, understand that's just a broad generalization, less common in temperate regions, quite common in hotter ones, a pattern still shifting as the planet warms. By now, you probably understand why so many European homes went generations without needing air conditioning. It wasn't about affordability. Climate and construction had already solved most of the problem on their own. Thick walls, shutters, high ceilings, and cool night breezes once worked together as a completely natural cooling system, using barely any energy at all. But as the climate keeps changing, those solutions have to adapt too. And engineers today still study traditional architecture to cut energy use, helping homes absorb less heat from the start, rather than relying purely on electricity to cool them down. Perhaps the biggest lesson here has nothing to do with air conditioners at all, and everything to do with how people design their lives around their environment. Sometimes, the most effective solution turns out to be an idea that's already hundreds of years old. Proof that technology doesn't always have to replace nature. Sometimes, it simply builds on what nature already provided. One thing deserves to be set straight before we wrap up. Saying Europe has no air conditioning isn't entirely accurate. Tens of millions of households already use it every summer, especially in hotter regions. And the real difference lies in how often it's used. Not a simple yes or no. Another common myth is that Europeans simply tolerate heat better than everyone else. But once temperatures cross a certain threshold, they feel just as uncomfortable as anyone. They just have more natural options before depending entirely on air conditioning. A lesson worth studying for any country planning cities in a hotter climate. Cutting just a few degrees indoors can save enormous amounts of electricity. Engineers call this reducing cooling demand before increasing cooling capacity, since keeping heat out is always more efficient than pushing it back outside. And that mindset has quietly become the standard behind many green buildings today. An air conditioner can cool a room, but the way people design their homes really decides whether they need one in the first place. Europe never rejected air conditioning. It simply never truly needed it for most of its climate history. When natural conditions change, the way people adapt changes with them. A pattern that is repeated throughout history. The real lesson isn't learning to live without air conditioning. It's reducing the need for it from the start. A better wall, a cooler roof, or a bit more greenery can sometimes matter more than another cooling unit. Which is exactly why so many modern cities are investing in green architecture instead of simply scaling up cooling capacity. Because an air conditioner only treats the symptom, while smart design solves the root of the problem. As the planet keeps warming, these lessons may matter more than ever. Perhaps one day, building principles hundreds of years old will help modern cities save billions of kilowatt hours of electricity. Proof that the answer to tomorrow's technology is sometimes hiding in the experience of the past. This story was never really just about summer. It's about how people adapt to the environment they live in. And every place has its own conditions. So there's no single perfect solution that fits everywhere. What matters most is truly understanding where you live, so you can choose the right solution instead of simply copying someone else's. So, here's a question for you. If you had to choose between a smart home that never needs air conditioning and a home entirely dependent on it, which one would you pick? Let us know in the comments below.